How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
What's going on, everybody? It's Marco here. As always, bringing you some streamers for week 4. Last week, we had some hits. We had some misses. Looking at you, Rondale. But I am excited to bring you some streamers for this week. And it's really position specific. So I'm talking one tight end, and then I've got, 3 or 4 wide receivers that I think could be really nice pieces in your flex, or if you're hit with the injury bug and you're looking at maybe T. Higgins or potentially Deontay Johnson missing time, these guys could slot in nicely. Or, of course, the Titans receivers, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones might not play. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to kick it off with my first streamer for week 4, and that is Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox has been a really important part of this Buffalo Bills offense. And you might be looking at his targets, and you're like, 4 or 5 targets, that doesn't seem important. But he has been someone that has been looked to in the red zone for this Buffalo Bills offense. Josh Allen has kind of gotten his stuff together after the first few weeks of starting slow. So I like Dawson Knox, especially this week against the Houston Texans, who are letting up the 5th most fantasy points to the tight end position. I think Dawson Knox gets in the end zone this week, and he could even get in twice based on what this team is doing, and they're not going to be needing to chuck it super deep or going super aggressive against the Houston Texans team that has looked better than people were expecting, but that is not that good and really shouldn't be able to compete with this Buffalo Bills defense and offense. So let's keep moving here. We're going to go to our wide receivers the rest of the way, and my first wide receiver is a guy who, if I'm being honest, I was saying all offseason, don't buy into this guy. And week 1, I was scared that I was going to be super wrong because he had a phenomenal week 1. Since then, he's played some tough defenses, but he really has not looked special for fantasy, and especially with the struggles of Zach Wilson. And so I am talking about Corey Davis. And Corey Davis is playing the Tennessee Titans this week, and they are an atrocious defense. We've talked about them ad nauseum on all of our videos, how rough this Tennessee Titans defense is. And if there's a strength to this defense, it's probably their rush defense, not their passing defense. And so with the lack of DBs and safety play, or quality DBs and safety play here for the Tennessee Titans, I think even if he struggles a little bit, Zach Wilson's going to be able to find Corey Davis, who's been the most useful of his pass catchers, even with a struggling start to the season. And Tennessee has let up the 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receivers, and it's a huge step down in competition from what Corey Davis, Zach Wilson, and this New York Jets team has faced in the first 3 weeks of the season. All right, so I mentioned A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. It's more than likely that A.J. Brown is going to be missing this week and maybe a few weeks. That alone is enough for me to say, in deeper leagues and 2-flex leagues, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine should be on your team. Because especially in PPR leagues, he ran the most routes last week when both of these guys were banged up. And if Julio Jones also doesn't play, that means he's probably going to be their number 1 wide receiver. I liked him when he came out 2 years ago. And I think what you see with this guy is he fits this offense well. He's 6'2", 218 or something like that. And he ran 25 routes last week, which led the team in routes because Julio and obviously A.J. Brown was hurt, but Julio was in and out. And I think even if Julio plays, we can expect a lot of that this week. And they're going against the New York Jets, who have been a little bit of a mess as a defense. It's a little daunting when you see, on Yahoo or Sleeper or wherever you're playing fantasy, the little red New York Jets symbol. But that is really confusing because the reality is they're not a very good pass defense. Most teams just haven't needed to pass the ball very much on them. And while that might be true for the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry might run through them. I think that Westbrook-Ikhine brings a really nice floor, and he can slot in as a flex 1, a flex 2 for your team this week. And I think he could see, 6 to 10 targets if both of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones are out. If Julio plays, I think he's got that nice 6 target floor heading against the New York Jets. So I like Westbrook-Ikhine to be a pretty solid play this week, like I said, in your flex 1 or flex 2 spot. All right, guys, I've got 2 more for you. And they're 2 guys who haven't really done a ton. One of them, the first guy I'm going to talk about, really had a lot of hype in the offseason. You know, along with Mac Jones, they thought, hey, this guy could be special. And if you look at the ancillary stats of this guy, he actually looks pretty good. He hasn't put it all together yet because the Patriots haven't put it all together yet. But Jakobi Meyers looks like he could be good. He's a player that has seen 29 targets in the first 3 weeks of the season, and he's going against Tampa Bay, who has the worst pass defense in the league so far. They added Richard Sherman, so it'll be a little bit of a bump up, but who knows if he even gets in this week. So Jakobi Meyers in an offense that's trying to get to the wide receiver more than they have in the first 3 weeks could be a nice play. He saw 14 targets last week. I don't think he sees 14, but in a game where they're going to probably having to be passing the ball pretty often against the Tampa Bay Bucs offense that's prolific, I could see Jakobi Meyers seeing 10, 12 targets this week. So go ahead and fire him up. I think he's going to have probably the best week of his season this week, and he could be a solid flex, maybe even a wide receiver 2 for you in week 4. All right, so my last target for streamers for week 4 is wide receiver Terrace Marshall for the Carolina Panthers. He hasn't seen a ton of work, but he's definitely, at the very least, the wide receiver 3 for this team. And I think he's starting to progress above Robbie Anderson for the wide receiver 2 on this team. His talent is there. We haven't seen much from Robbie Anderson, and I think that's going to continue. I don't think last year was what we're going to see from him. I think it was a little bit of a flash in the pan. So Terrace Marshall with no CMC against a Dallas offense that's going to make teams throw the ball against them. Their defenses look better. Trayvon Diggs looks like he's a totally different player, but he is going to be on DJ Moore more often than not. He's hardly going to be against Terrace Marshall. And so I think Terrace Marshall could be a great play this week, especially in PPR leagues. I'm looking at, 5 to 8 targets, and maybe he gets into the end zone. He's a big-bodied player, and he's a playmaker. So I like Terrace Marshall for week 4. Go ahead, and I would even start him if you're looking at the guys I mentioned. I would say if Julio and A.J. Brown are out, I would have Ikhine slightly above him, and Jakobi Meyers and him are neck and neck. So they're really, really high on my list for streamers for week 4. Like I said, wide receiver 2, flex 1, Terrace Marshall. He could get you a nice win in week 4. Well, that's all I have for you guys. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.